Hi, welcome to my March wrap-up. I read a lot of books this month, so let's get into them. I read Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. I give it 5 stars. I liked it a lot. It's set on a farm in the 30s, and it follows two guys who work on a farm, but they want to have their own farm so they can be like their own men, and it's just them trying to achieve that goal. It was short. I thought the cover was really pretty, kind of like watercolory. That's what it reminded me of. It had like kind of a sad tone to it, but it was still very enjoyable, I guess. The next book I read was Stardust by Neil Gaiman. I liked it a lot. I gave it 5 stars. It was fantastical because it has obviously has a unicorn and has princesses and witches and fairies and all that stuff, which I like. It had a really cool market scene where the fairies are trying to ply their wares. It was funny. It was told in multiple perspectives, which I don't really like usually, but I thought in here it was done really well. You got to see all the different characters mixed together. I read To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, adapted and illustrated by Fordham. I gave this 5 stars because I really liked To Kill a Mockingbird, but this was really cool too because it was illustrated version. How cool is that? It's like just a really cute graphic novel. It's about a girl growing up in the 30s and poverty and racism and all that. Next book I read was Diary of Anne Frank by Anne Frank, adapted by Ari Folman, illustrations by David Polonsky. I gave this 5 stars. It had really cute illustrations. It was humorous. Made me really want to read the original even more. Like, I want to read her, like, just her diary, basically. Hopefully I get to that soon. So basically it was just the diary she kept when she was in hiding during the Holocaust. Next I read Wake, Fade, and Gone by Lisa McMann. This was, it's a series, it's 3 books in one. It's quite big. I gave it 3 stars. It was humorous. It had a really cool writing style, kind of like a journal entry, but slightly different, but I thought it was really cool. Had short chapters. It ended nicely, because I was wondering where it was going since it was so long, but it ended really nicely. It follows this girl who she gets sucked in other people's dreams, but when she does that, it has like negative, well, it affects her negatively, like her health. So she has to decide whether she wants to continue doing that or like basically live in isolation, so that she won't be sucked in anyone's dreams anymore, but then she'll never see her family or boyfriend or friends or anything like that, so she has to make a decision. Next I read Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. I liked it a lot. I gave it 5 stars. I want to read more Jane Austen. This is my second one. I liked the movie as well. It had pretty short chapters, which was nice since the writing, I think the writing can be pretty intense in these novels from the 1800s. It was very similar to Pride and Prejudice because basically it's about 2 girls trying to get married because they're poor. They want to marry rich men, essentially. This is about them trying to get married, so it reminded me very much of Pride and Prejudice in that way. I'm not sure what her other novels are about, but I'm guessing they're probably about the same thing. But I want to get to them. I think there's 4 maybe. I'm not sure. The next books I read were online. There were plays actually by Oscar Wilde. I read An Ideal Husband and A Woman of No Importance. I gave them both 3 stars. I thought they were funny. They dealt with political intrigue, but like in a funny way, because I don't know if politics are funny, but they're both short since they're plays. I guess plays tend to be short, I don't know. I did notice that many of the sentences that were in these plays were the same as in Dorian Gray, which I thought was very interesting. He reused them, I guess? I don't know. I guess they're his, so of course he could. I don't know. The next book I read was The Mermaid by Christina Henry. I liked it a lot. I gave it 5 stars. It has mermaids, yay. It was historical. It was magical. It involves a circus because it had P.T. Barnum as a character. It's pretty interesting. It's about him finding a mermaid, or rather actually the mermaid. She wants to live on land and be a human, so she does that. She marries a human, but he dies. I don't know if that's a spoiler or not, but spoiler. He dies, and then she goes to P.T. Barnum's, and she goes into his museum, I guess. But he decides that he doesn't want her to leave, but she wants to leave, and what will happen? I really like this author's other book called Alice. It was an Alice in Wonderland retelling. I do think this book is like really cutely shaped. It's like a square. And it ended really nicely, but I would have liked more of the ending because it dealt with kind of a reunion, and I wanted to like see the characters' interactions more. The next two books I also read online. They're by L. Frank Baum, the author of the Wizard of Oz. They were called The Sea Fairies and The Master Key. I gave them both 2 stars. The Sea Fairies dealt with mermaids, like a fairy tale. It was cute. And the Master Key dealt with this boy who meets this genie who can like give him all sorts of wishes, but they all deal with electricity. I guess because electricity was so cool when it was written. And they're both alright. They both like are very adventurous because both the characters go on adventures. They dragged a bit, and they're both like fairy tales kind of. He seems to have written a lot of fairy tales. I guess you could call Wizard of Oz a fairy tale too. I don't know. It's clearly all whimsical and stuff. The next book I read was The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I give this 5 stars. I liked it a lot. It deals with like suicide, but it was also very like humorous. Like her writing is really funny and she's witty, and I really like the description she uses. And this reminded me so much of Catcher in the Rye because both the characters, they're very like condescending, and like they use the same kind of language to like describe things, and the way they talk is very similar. I felt like I was reading Catcher in the Rye, but like from a female perspective, I guess. So this follows an aspiring poet, Esther Greenwood, and she's has a internship, and she has an internship in New York for a magazine, but she's also dealing with depression, so she goes back home to try and figure out, I guess, what she wants to do and deal with her depression. The next book I read was Play It As It Lays by Joan Didion. I read this online. I gave it 5 stars. I had just watched the movie, which I thought was good, but then I saw it was a book, and I was like, yeah, I want to read that, and I think the book was even better. It had like really quick chapters. Like I think that's a very interesting way to write. It's like there were a lot of chapters, but they were on like 1 or 2 pages. It made it very quick and easy to read, which I liked a lot. I just read, as I just said, I just read The Bell Jar, and I have to say that Play It As It Lays is very similar in the fact that it has to do with women dealing with depression, basically. In Play It As It Lays, it's about this actress who is dealing with depression, and it's just, you know, about her life and what she does and all that. But they were both very similar in that way. The next book I read was Evernight by Claudia Gray. I read this online. I gave it 3 stars. It's a vampire romance. It had quite a bit of like plot twist, which I think was very interesting. Other than that, it kind of dragged. It also seemed that at one point there was a part missing because they were talking about something that hadn't really been discussed previously. This is a series, but I won't be continuing it. It involves with a girl, and she goes to boarding school, but it turns out that it's a vampire boarding school, so what will happen? The next book I read was Fairy Tale by Balog. I gave this 2 stars. I read it online. It dealt with fairies. It was funny. It was a quick read. It had like a romance in it. There's also a plot twist in this one, which was interesting. This one dealt with a girl who finds out that her boyfriend isn't exactly human, and basically what happens after that. The next book I read was Folly by Marthe Jocelyn. I read this online. I gave it 2 stars. It's historical. The way it was written, it jumps between like different years and different perspectives, which I don't like. So I felt that like it dragged a bit, and I kind of like I skimmed it, and I kind of only read like the one perspective that I was interested in, which is the girl who she works as a maid, and she has a baby, and she gives the baby up, and she wonders if she'll see the baby again. But the other perspective was of the baby, like as a child. That's why it's set like in different years, because it's telling his life as a child, but then it's telling her life what that led up to. The next book I read was Health by Edeet Ravel. I read it online and it was really good. I gave it 5 stars. It involved kidnapping, which is a theme that I like to read about. It was quick read. It was funny. It dealt with Stockholm Syndrome, where the victim starts to fall or sympathize with the kidnapper. It also included images, which I thought was a nice touch. So it's about this girl who gets kidnapped while she's at a tourist attraction, and she basically gets held in this room, hence the title, as a hostage for like a prisoner release. The kidnapper wants a certain prisoner released in exchange for her. She, starts to fall for the kidnapper, so what's gonna happen? Who knows? Last book I read was All the Truth That's in Me by Julie Berry. I read this online. I gave it 3 stars. It was historical. It also involved kidnapping, so I guess I was looking for more after I read Helt. It was a quick read. The chapters were written in segments, which was I think a really good idea because it makes it easier to read. I like that style a lot. I mentioned that a lot, but I like the small chapters. I just find that they're more I don't know, easier to read, like I said. This follows a girl who's been kidnapped, but then she makes her way back to the village she lives in. But through the trauma, I guess, she she stopped talking, kind of mutism, selective mutism, I think it's called. I don't know. So basically, it's just her trying to find her voice again and her life, what happens in her life. So that was the books I read in March. I read quite a few. I'm doing really good with my reading challenge. Okay, see you next time.